Hello, hello. So today we're going to look at air traffic control within FSX. So I'm sure by now you already have an idea of what air traffic control is and what it's used for, but let's cover it quickly just to be sure. Air traffic control is a service where people on the ground direct planes safely through controlled airspace. Their main responsibilities include aircraft safety by preventing collisions, organisation of air traffic, and providing information and other means of support to pilots. The controllers and the pilots will communicate using high-powered radios. Now, there are several different disciplines within air traffic control. You have ground control, which is responsible for aircraft movement on the ground, basically making sure that they drive along the correct paths or taxiways in and around an airport, and assigning aircraft to gates or parking spots. Next you have local control, which is responsible for aircraft landing and departing from the runways. These controllers give aircraft permission to move on and off of a runway and deal with planes flying in the immediate vicinity of an airport, such as planes on their final approach to land. Then you have approach and terminal control, who are responsible for a wider area around an airport, and ultimately they're responsible for more planes which fly in and out of that airspace. There's a couple more disciplines which are involved, but these are the most common three. Busy areas, such as major cities, will have a team which covers each area. However, smaller airports which see less air traffic may have one or two controllers who can cover each job. So, communication between a pilot and ATC is relatively straightforward. Generally speaking, it's a request or an instruction, and the response is usually a repetition of that instruction/request. Also, when communicating, an aircraft's call sign will be announced, so the pilot and ATC know that they're talking to the correct plane. So let's say we have a British Airways flight flying along. British Airways uses the call sign Speedbird for their planes. So a basic communication would go something like this, starting with air traffic control. Speedbird 123, turn left to a heading of 180 degrees. And then the British Airways pilot will respond, turning left to 180 degrees, Speedbird 123. So you can see there that ATC come onto the radio and start with Speedbird 123, so they're announcing which plane they're talking to, and then they give the turn instruction. The instruction is then repeated by the pilot to show he's received and understood the message, and then he announces his call sign so ATC know that the correct plane has received and understood the instruction. Now let's look at how this is applied in FSX. In the simulator, there's generally two types of flight you can make, a VFR and an IFR. Remember that VFR is flying by what you can see out of the plane, whereas IFR is flying and navigating using the instruments, so you can fly in bad weather, for example. A pilot will interact differently with air traffic control based on what type of flight he or she is doing. During VFR flying, the pilot is predominantly in control of the flight. They can dictate where they want to go, and as a result, they will be initiating contact with air traffic control more often than not. During IFR flying, however, you will mostly be flying to a flight plan, which needs to be filed with ATC. This means that air traffic control will expect you to fly to that plan and give you instructions based on that plan. ATC will have more influence over the plane's position, and you'll find that they will contact the pilot first more often. So I figured that the best way to show you how this all works is to jump into the sim and do a couple of example flights. So I'll do that just now and also show you how to use the radios in a plane. So here we are back in our trusty little Cessna. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to look at the radios. So you'll find the radios here on the right hand side. There's these top two sort of panels on the radio stack here. Now these are actually two separate radios. You've got your primary one here and your secondary one here. Now each radio actually serves two purposes, or has two functions. The first, on left hand side of the radio, is the communication. So this is what allows you to talk to air traffic control. On the right hand side you have navigations, where you can tune into different radio towers for navigation purposes. So you'll notice that both communications and navigations have two sort of sets of numbers. These are your radio frequencies. The left hand number represents your active frequency, and the right hand one represents your standby frequency. So to change frequencies, what you do is you actually change the standby one. So you can do that by either clicking on the dial or by clicking on the numbers directly themselves. I'll show you what I mean here. So, now, if you wanted to make that your active radio frequency, all you would simply do is click the button here with the two arrows on it, and you see that the frequencies switch places. So if you wanted to contact air traffic control, there's two different ways of doing it. Up the window there, you can see that we're currently sat at Inverness, and the frequency for Inverness ground control is 122.6. Now you can hit option 1 and it will automatically tune the radios, or you can manually tune them to get for a bigger list of options basically. So that's what I'm going to do just now. So I'll go down to my standby frequency, which is already at 122, and just tune it down to 122.6. And then I'll switch that to be my active frequency. And you can see there that it's opened up a new list of options there, because we're now tuned in and active on the correct frequency. One thing before I continue with the flight, remember I was talking about how airlines have unique call signs. Well, lots of sort of private small aircraft don't use call signs. The way they communicate is they identify themselves by the type of plane that they are and the aircraft's registration. So if we have a look here, this is our registration plate down here. So when speaking on air traffic control, we would identify ourselves as Cessna Golf Lima Echo Romeo November. So what we're going to do just now is I'm just going to jump into the virtual cockpit so I have a better view out of the cockpit there, and then what we'll do is we'll go and fly a quick pattern just so you can see how air traffic control works when moving around on the ground and also when flying. There we go, that's better. So let's open up air traffic control and let's go for a flight. So we'll choose option 1, where we want to remain in the pattern.
Inverness ground, Cessna Golf Lima Echo Romeo November, ready to taxi, touch and go. Cessna Golf Lima Echo Romeo November, taxi to and hold short of runway 5. Team taxiway, contact tower 122.6 when ready. Taxi, hold short, runway 5, via taxiway, Cessna Echo Romeo November.
Okay, so there you have an example of an exchange with air traffic control. So what we done was we started by calling out to Inverness Ground Control. We identified ourselves as Cessna, and then our registration there, and we indicated that we were ready to taxi or drive along the ground, and we wanted to go for a touch and go. So basically we wanted to fly within the pattern at Inverness Airport. Air traffic control called us back and called out to our plane first, Cessna Golf Lima Echo Romeo November, and then they simply repeated our request. They gave us permission to taxi to and hold short of runway 5 using the taxiway, and then they asked us to contact the tower control or the local control on the frequency 122.6 when ready. So you might have noticed that they've asked us to contact tower on 122.6 because Inverness Airport is quite a small airport. This is an example of where one controller can do several different jobs in one, because there's not much traffic that comes in and out of the airport. And then we simply just confirmed that we heard and understood the instruction there. So we said we're going to taxi and then stop before we reach runway 5. And then you'll notice that we've now identified ourselves as Cessna Echo Romeo November. Once you've established contact with air traffic control, then you can kind of shorten your aircraft registration to the last 3 letters. It just makes communicating a bit quicker and a bit easier for everyone involved. So as we get up close to the runway, you'll notice that we'll get a new option will pop up where we can request takeoff clearance from the tower. So that's what we'll do, is we'll request, and then you'll hear the tower will sort of repeat that request and give us permission, and then we'll repeat that we've understood and we've received permission.
Inverness Tower, Cessna Golf Lima Echo Romeo November, ready at runway 5, touch and go. Cessna Golf Lima Echo Romeo November, clear for takeoff, runway 5, touch and go, left traffic approved. Cleared for takeoff, runway 5, Cessna
So there we go. Again, it was a similar exchange there. So we requested that we were ready for takeoff. The tower gave us clearance for takeoff, and then we confirmed that we were cleared to take off. So let's go and take off now and fly a quick pattern, just so you can see a couple more radio exchanges that you might find during a quick VFR flight. Okay, so now you'll see that we have a new option there which says request a full stop landing. So at the moment we're going to fly a pattern and then do a little touch and go, so that's where we land on the runway, keep on rolling down the runway, and then take off again. If you wanted to stop and wanted to kind of park up again, that's where we have the option to do a full stop landing. So you have an option to request that as you're flying along the pattern there. So what I'll try and do is I'll try and continue the flight with the and keep the ATC window open all the time. Okay, so you see that we've got a couple more options now. So if you're in an unfamiliar area and you're close to the airport and you're expecting to land, you can actually speak to the tower and ask for directions to the airport. If you're this close to it and you're not sure where it is, then you shouldn't really be flying, to be honest. But I'll give you an example of what that says just now.
Inverness Tower, Cessna Golf Lima Echo Romeo November is unfamiliar with the area. Request directions to the airport. Cessna Echo Romeo November. Airport is 9 o'clock, 2 miles.
There you go. So they kind of just give you a kind of a general idea of where the airport is in relation to your plane. And you see the third option there is we can cancel our landing intentions. So if we decide that we don't want to stay in the pattern anymore and we want to just go off and fly off somewhere completely different, then we can just say to the tower that we want to cancel our intention to land again, and then they'll just clear us to go off and go off on our own way. But we won't do that just now. What I'll do is I'll do a circuit here. What I'll do in the next kind of clip, as I'll go off on I kind of pretend that I'm going off and flying in a different sort of direction. Now what happens is when we draw level with the end of the runway, air traffic control will actually clear us to land. So this is a difference to real world flying. In real world flying,
Echo Romeo November. Clear touch and go. Left traffic. Runway 5.
so you see that air traffic control have given us an instruction there, so we'll just acknowledge that we've understood and accept the instruction.
Clear for touch and go. Runway 5. Cessna Echo Romeo November.
So that differs from the real world because in the real world it's usually the pilot who will announce where they are, what position they're on at any point along the pattern. So but in FSX you'll find that air traffic control will sort of guide you in first, basically. So I'll try and remember my pattern. I do apologise if this is way off what I've taught in my previous video. So yeah, the focus of this video is mainly on air traffic control and how that all works. Yeah, it's not too bad. A bit low. Could be better though. So that's how you would interact with air traffic control when flying through a circuit. What I'll do is I'll continue down to landing because you'll see one other option will pop up briefly. And that'll be where we have an option to do a go around. So if we're for example flying in bad weather or heavy wind, and we're not feeling confident that we can safely put the plane onto the runway, then what we can do is we can simply climb back up into the sky and announce that we're going to do a go around, which and then ATC will basically allow us to sort of fly a circuit again, and then come back and have another attempt at landing. And if you're at this point and you need to request the airport direction, then you absolutely should not be flying. Let's just put this on the ground. There we go. And then you'd simply work on full throttle, get the flaps up again, and take off. So that's flying a circuit with ATC. Next up, we'll have a quick look at just a general VFR flight. Okay, so this example is just going to be a sort of a general VFR flight. So this is if you just want to go on a cross-country jolly, for example. So what I've done is I've just taken off from Inverness Airport and I'm just going to fly directly north. You'll notice what will happen is we'll get some new options when we get a bit further away from the airport. So I'll skip ahead to that point in the video and explain what's happening then.
Cessna Echo Romeo, November. You are leaving my airspace. Frequency change approved.
Okay, so basically we're far away from Inverness now that we're not covered by local support. So what they've done is they've asked us to change over, or they've given us permission to change frequency. So the simulator will default to the nearest sort of terminal location, which is actually Lossiemouth for us. So what I'll do is I'll just tune Lossiemouth automatically, and you can see we have a couple of different options there. So request flight following is where you can continue a VFR flight, however you can have radar and ATC support as if you were flying in an IFR flight. This just basically allows air traffic control to give you updates about planes which are nearby, or any warnings about weather that might be affecting you in the nearby area. So usually when flying, it would be a good idea to go on and do flight following. The second option that you have there is where you can open up an IFR flight plan, so you can actually sort of essentially log a flight plan with ATC whilst you're in the air, and then you can use that to then land in bad weather if needs be. And the third option there is just simply the nearest airport list. So if you're not sure of airports in the local area, you can hit option 3, and that will give you a list of all the airports within, I think it's a 30-mile radius of the aircraft there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn back and head towards Inverness, and showing an example of what happens when you're coming in to land, or you want to land from a general VFR flight. So I'll turn around just now, and we'll get in touch with ATC. Okay, so we're pointed back towards Inverness again. So what we're going to do is just going to call them and announce that I want to do a full stop landing. Oh, okay, first we need to tune them, of course, because we switched over to the Lossiemouth frequency, so we need to tune ourselves again for Inverness local.
Inverness Tower, Cessna Golf Lima Echo Romeo, November. 7 miles north to land. Cessna Golf Lima Echo Romeo, November. Inverness Tower, entered left downwind, runway 5, altimeter 2992. Entered left downwind, runway 5. Cessna Echo Romeo, November.
Okay, so you'll notice there the instruction that they gave us was to enter the left downwind for the active runway, which is runway 5. So when you're flying a VFR flight, more often than not, air traffic control will ask you to enter the sort of the pattern for the active runway, and usually they'll give you 3 options. They'll ask you to enter either the left or the right downwind, depending on your which side of the runway you're on and approaching from. They'll ask you to either enter left or right base, again depending on your position relative to the runway, or if you're kind of end onto the runway and flying straight in, what they'll do is they'll ask you to fly straight in or fly straight in approach, where you just basically fly straight on towards the runway and land straight away. So then from here you would just simply join the circuit pattern as you normally would fly it. So come down to about 1,000 feet, join on the correct side downwind leg, and then once you're in the same position as we saw in the last flight, they'll give you permission to land once you reach the sort of the end of the runway there. So the last two flights have been just your normal VFR flying. Let's see what happens when we try to request takeoff, but with unfavourable weather conditions, like heavy rain and heavy cloud cover.
Inverness ground, Cessna Golf Lima Echo Romeo November, ready to taxi, north departure. Cessna Golf Lima Echo Romeo November, Inverness ground, airport is currently IFR, plus denied.
Okay, so there you have an example of when VFR flying is denied. Basically, the weather conditions are so bad that you cannot fly under VFR conditions. So planes who have filed flight plans that can fly IFR will be able to fly in these conditions. However, for just your normal sort of pleasure flying by VFR, you won't be allowed to go out, basically. Okay, so for my last example, I'm going to do an IFR flight from Aberdeen Airport in Scotland up to Inverness. It's just going to be a very quick, rough video. It's not. I'm not going to explain much as I do it. It's just to show you a few more examples of different air traffic control messages you receive while you're flying an IFR flight. So let's go.
Aberdeen ground, Bombardier Golf Juliet Echo Tango Tango, IFR to Inverness, ready to copy. Bombardier Golf Juliet Echo Tango Tango is cleared at Inverness Airport as filed. Fly runway heading, climb and maintain 6,000. Departure frequency is 119.05, squawk 3254. Bombardier Golf Juliet Echo Tango Tango, cleared at Inverness Airport as filed. Fly runway heading, climb and maintain 6,000. Departure on 119.05, squawk 3254. Bombardier Echo Tango Tango, read back correct. Contact ground on 121.7. Aberdeen ground, Bombardier Golf Juliet Echo Tango Tango with Kilo, ready to taxi IFR. Bombardier Golf Juliet Echo Tango Tango, taxi to and hold short at runway 34, via taxiway whiskey. Contact tower on 118.11 ready. Taxi to and hold short runway 34, via taxiway whiskey. Bombardier Echo Tango Tango. Aberdeen Tower, Bombardier Golf Juliet Echo Tango Tango at runway 34, ready for takeoff IFR to Inverness. Bombardier Golf Juliet Echo Tango Tango, cleared for takeoff, runway 34. Cleared for takeoff, runway 34, Bombardier Golf Juliet Echo Tango Tango. Bombardier Echo Tango Tango, contact Aberdeen departure on 119.05. 119.05 for Bombardier Echo Tango Tango. Aberdeen departure, Bombardier Golf Juliet Echo Tango Tango is at 1,200, climbing 6,000. Bombardier Golf Juliet Echo Tango Tango, Aberdeen departure, roger, altimeter 2992. Bombardier Echo Tango Tango, turn left heading 2905, resume on navigation, climb and maintain 6,000. Turn left heading 2905, resume on navigation, climb and maintain 6,000. Bombardier Echo Tango Tango. Bombardier Echo Tango Tango, you are 43 miles east, turn left heading 240, expect vectors ILS, runway 5, approach. Turn left heading 240, expect vectors ILS, runway 5, approach. Bombardier Echo Tango Tango. Bombardier Echo Tango Tango, you are 24 miles southwest 0225, descend and maintain 2,700, cleared ILS, runway 5, approach. Maintain 2,700 until established on the localizer. Contact Inverness Tower on 122.6. Turn right heading 025, descend and maintain 2,700. Cleared ILS, runway 5. Approach, maintain 2,700 until established. Tower on 122.6. Bombardier Echo Tango Tango. Inverness Tower, Bombardier Golf Juliet Echo Tango Tango is 23 miles southwest. Inbound ILS, runway 5. Approach. Bombardier Golf Juliet Echo Tango Tango. Inverness Tower, fly straight in, runway 5. Altimeter 2992. Fly straight in, runway 5. Bombardier Echo Tango Tango. Bombardier Echo Tango Tango, cleared to land, runway 5. Cleared to land, runway 5. Bombardier Echo Tango Tango.
So there you go, that's a few examples of air traffic control in FSX. In my next video I'll be looking at the ADF or the automatic direction finder. This will be the first video where we start using radio navigation in an aircraft. Hope to see you there, thanks again for watching and I'll catch you later.